Hey, how's it going? I was very much relying on Rules to join this one because I'm sick and I didn't want to do the reading. But he's not here, so I'm gonna do the reading, sick as I may be. I am also apparently gonna have to do the banter section by myself, which, yeah, not easy. So if anyone else wants to come up and talk nonsense for 5 minutes, be my guest, please request. I am also kind of doing the housekeeping on Twitter and Discord as well. So yeah. Oh wow, we have precisely 0 people volunteering as tribute. Oh no, we have one. Okay, let's go. Cultural literati. I saw that you read the text in the past 10 minutes, which is in the best traditions of this space. So yeah, let's go. What do you think of it in the past 10 minutes?
It's definitely it seems to relate a lot to the first part of our reading last week, with regarding the scope of Dao, specifically. Um, it's less Taoist actually. It's less focused on Dao, and it seems more focused on the yin and the yang, but it draws on a lot of the same the ideas of subtlety and grossness. So the idea of being big and the idea of being small or basically the entire essence of the work.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about the intellectual context though.
I was surprised by how much I ended up seeing it relate to last week's. So if anyone wasn't in last week's, that was the autumn flood chapter of the Zhuangzi. So yeah, and I think after last week's, we were talking in the Discord, and I threw something out that was just a sort of casual observation last week, but I'm going to make it the central pillar of the discussion this week, which is this idea that. So let me read from my own works, which isn't egotistical at all. A name is a true name if the sentence one creates with it will both compile and run. So yeah, for anyone who's not a computer guy, I guess so a sentence that will compile is basically a sentence that works grammatically. So if I say the sky is cat, that doesn't work grammatically. But if I say the sky is a cat, that does actually work grammatically. In terms of running, it's a bit more difficult because obviously that is just a plain statement, so it's not a functional sentence. You would need to append something onto the beginning to turn it into a logic operator. So if you append, given the state of reality right now, the sky is a cat, then we can tell the sentence doesn't run. I'm looking out of the window now and I see 0 cats. So yeah, that was kind of the starting discussion point that I wanted for this. Rules is in now, so I'm going to force him to read. Where you live? I can't see any cats. No, it's kind of disappointing, to be honest. But normally there's 1 or 2 around. But
so you normally do. That's nice.
Yeah. But not in the sky, to be fair. Only earthbound ones. So yeah, rules is in. I guess I will do a quick.
I had too much curry yesterday, so I have a little bit of a throat. So I sound a bit different today.
Oh, I thought the problem I was expecting to have arisen from that was an entirely different one.
No. That was the problem. I just didn't want to say it out loud. That was the problem. I'm sorry to say, but also I have a throat thing. That was sorry, too much information. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Well, systematically when we record, the recorded ones are the
Spicy ones, as it were.
yeah.
So, the we used to call them ring singers, but anyway, so what do you want me to read? I maybe attempted to do the reading, but it was all footnotes. I got confused.
Oh yeah, well
Okay,
I
rules.
actually have a physical copy that is in Chinese, and that is all footnotes as well.
I found a
be rough.
translation online. Whose is this? Some group. I don't know. Wait, hold on. Wait, let me see if I can find the author.
Actually,
Oh, it's a group.
hold on,
Yeah.
rules. 'Cause I already read the text, so I
thank
don't want
God.
to read it again. But if you want me to read the footnotes, I will read the footnotes.
No, I mean no, that's okay.
But if it's Bros Chat's footnotes, they're actually quite good, and I will go into some of the good ones after we read it.
But what do you want me to read? Where is it? Where is it in chat? Oh, here we go. Oh, Edward, thank you, Eddie. Oh, such a nice voice.
I don't want to do. Wait a second. I don't want to do there's one by some guy named Swearingen and Who or something. I don't want to do that one. It's the Bros Chat translation is better.
Swearingen and Who? Okay, wait, hold on. Let me see if I can find the source. Apologies, everyone. Let me see if I can go back in my history of man.
Yeah. No, that is the one that is in the chat that you're looking at. Right
you don't
now.
want to look at that one necessarily. Okay.
No. I do wanna look at that one. Not the most recent one. I want the one that's written in like the one that was written with a typewriter and a pen.
Okay,
I
downloaded one from the University of Roehampton /Muslimonline ... and it's by a man named Zhao Zheng. I don't know what that means, but I downloaded it. So it's not very elegant though. So maybe I don't know. I'll read it as like backup.
Okay.
Anyway, okay. So which is
I posted our footnotes up on the billboard. It took me a while to see them. I don't know if you can see them yet.
Ah, yes. There it is. Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So now.
So that's the what I'm calling the Bros Chat version, because this was actually his thesis. It was an exercise in computer-assisted text analysis, which is
he liked the typewriter.
much.
I
don't think he was first. I think he was. I think that there was some other guy, I can't remember his name, who did a computer-assisted text analysis of the Shenzhe fragments.
Oh, computer-assisted text analysis spells cat analysis. That's nice.
Oh, yeah. It's cat themed today. But
creepy.
I don't want you to read it yet because I want to do my spiel about the background.
Okay, do the spiel. I'll pause, mute.
Okay. So I feel like the edition that we are using is important in this case because the computer text analysis is sort of a big deal in it. So yeah, the Guǐgǔzi is kind of a mysterious text. Guǐgǔ almost certainly not the author's real name. The story behind it is that he was some mysterious hermit in a mystical mountain. This sounds like a racial stereotype at this point, but yeah, no, seriously, he was a mystical hermit in a magic mountain, and he taught Suqin and Zhang Yi the arts of persuasion. That in itself is very unlikely because Zhang Yi was very much older than Suqin. The stratagems of the Warring States kind of implies that they were in this epic battle of persuasion across the Warring States, and actually their careers barely overlapped, only just right at the very end of Zhang Yi's career. So yeah, probably the one fact that we know about this guy is bullshit. Bros Chat, the guy whose translation we're going to be reading, he kind of implies that he thinks it's a Han Dynasty text, which, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be against that. What is quite interesting about it is, unlike pretty much all of the other classical texts, it has no real analogies in. So rather than doing kind of pure logic, what the classical Chinese text tended to do is provide these sort of legal style analogies, and you were supposed to reason from them. And this text doesn't do that. This is a very dense Taoist reasoning. So dense that some of it and some of the chapters that we're actually going to read right now actually kind of looks like it would originally have been a table, or these sort of Nash equilibrium diagrams. So there's a bit that we're going to run into in a second where he's talking about opening up using yin and yang, and then closing using yin and yang. And the way that it is written, it looks like kind of the ancient equivalent of what would have been a table. So it's something that was either explained in tabular form orally and that has been lost, or in the original text maybe it was actually written as a table. And we find these things. There's a very nice one in some commentaries on the stratagems that were accidentally included in the original text. We see this sort of very table-looking like reasoning about game theory, which we also see in this text. So yeah, Broschat's text analysis. What he was basically doing was using a computer to kind of work out which versions are likely the oldest and most authentic, with those two not necessarily being the same thing. So he wasn't really doing sort of computer-assisted translation, but he was doing something that is kind of the ancestor of that, which is quite nice. If you're into computers, which I know Yangza especially is not, so he's probably not a fan of this one. But anyway, yeah. Rules. Do you wanna get going, or we'll do chapter 1?
What do you want me to read?
Chapter 1. We might just go straight into chapter 2 as well.
Okay, let's see chapter 1.
It's in the screenshot. So some of the the first couple of pages are like 90% footnotes.
Right.
But,
so do you just want me to read the top bit, right? So the first chapter is first Chuan cleaving and joining, that one. Cleaving and joining. And it goes.
And
okay.
I actually, before you get into it, I will do some of the footnotes. So the cleaving and joining thing is important, because there's sort of Broschat, he did his translation before Hu and Swearingen, but he kind of anticipates the counter argument. So Hu and Swearingen, in their translation, they just give this as I think opening and closing. But Broschat, he actually argues that the author meant opening, the character mean opening. But for some reason, the author chose opening and closing either. Pi, the word that is used for opening or cleaving, as Broschat gives it here.
XYZ, sorry. I didn't hear most of that, the explanation as to why something was something else, and I did.
Oh,
yeah, I think you're lagging. Yeah, you've been lagging for like the past 45 seconds.
Oh, me or Rules?
You.
Okay, so I'll start again. Sorry. I'll go to data. It's probably better.
Yeah, you're lagging again.
Hello?
Hello. Okay, you're back.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm on data now, not Wi-Fi, so hopefully this will be better. Yeah, the characters used for opening and closing or cleaving and I can't even remember what. What does cleaving and
Cleaving
joining?
and joining.
Yeah. So yeah, Brochat anticipates the Hu translation by saying that even though you can these in theory do mean opening and closing these characters, there are perfectly simple, easy characters that also mean opening and closing. So if the author chose these obscure ones, it must be for a reason. Whether that is because they were technical terms whose meaning has been lost to us, or whether because it's just, Han Dynasty Taoist love of obscurity. But either way, he's decided not to go with opening and closing. He's decided to go with cleaving and joining, which I actually quite like. And he gives a reasoning behind this. He says that from his perspective, especially the character Bai, which is given as cleaving here, it's kind of prying apart with both hands in a temporary manner, which is much more picturesque than just opening. So yeah, Rules, I will leave it up to you.
Okay, well, how many pages is it? I'm trying to open it all
I think
up.
it should be shorter than last week, I think.
Well,
I have a PDF, so
no, I'm trying to prepare all the pages. Is what I'm saying from your thread. So it goes on to
my thread has 4, 8, 12.
So is it all 12 pages?
It's 15.
Now it ends on page 139. So 139 is when the second chapter starts.
Yeah.
So just go through page 138. From like page 134, so like 5 pages.
Just bear with me. Technical difficulties. I maybe forgot how the computer works, which is ironic.
Well, I can send you a PDF if you want. Let me.
No.
Scroll.
Sorry. No, I got that wrong. Actually, no, I was looking at the wrong page. Actually, it's from page 130 to page 138. But again, the first 4 pages are like pretty much like about 90% footnotes.
Yeah.
And we don't want you to read the footnotes.
So hold on. I got this. Hold on. Sorry about this, guys. Just go grab a drink or something while I open up tabs. I'm almost there.
You want me to read them?
Why are you opening tabs? Just read it one tab at a time.
I just want to make it's very confusing, okay? And I can't necessarily see the page numbers all at once. Okay, so this one begins 142. Wait, this one begins 142.
No, not 142.
142 is the last. 142 is the last one. Shh, there's a system.
Okay, that's the end of the second one.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and then this guy is 134. Okay, and then this guy is B. First Juan, cleaving and joining. Okay, I got this. Okay, what could possibly go wrong? Then it goes to,
Best of British luck.
I'm really feeling that curry now.
There are line numbers, right? If you need assistance. Each line begins with a number, and then they do that every 5 lines or so.
I've never read the Bible. Okay. First Juan, cleaving and joining. Do you want me to read the whole thing? Okay.
Just the first
the first bit? The first chapter. Where does it end? 138, you said, right?
Yeah.
Bob said. Okay. First Juan, cleaving and joining. If we investigate the past, we find that the position of the sage between heaven and earth has been foremost among all living things. Observing the opening and closing of yin and yang, he has ordained things with names. He knows the passageways of preservation and destruction, has calculated the cycles of all things, and has understood the rationale of men's hearts. He has seen the indications of transformation in all these things, and has kept guard over their passageways. So it is that from ancient times until today, the way of sages in the world has been one. Although transformation is endless, each thing has that to which it returns. Sometimes things are yin, sometimes they are yang. At times they are weak, at times strong. Sometimes they open, sometimes they close. At times they are slack, and at others are tense. For this reason, the sage unvaryingly watches over the passageways, carefully examines that by which things precede or lag behind, takes measure of quantity and abilities, and evaluates cleverness and strengths and shortcomings. There are differences in humaneness and rightness between the worthy and the unworthy, the intelligent and the stupid, the brave and the cowardly. By that can you cleave, by that can you join, in that way promote, in that way demote, thereby demean, and thereby ennoble. Watch over them by non-initiation. Carefully ascertain what is and what is not, together with their substance or lack of it. Go along with their tastes and desires in order to see their intentions. Subtly give back what they have said, while reversing it out of context in order to see what they really mean. Value the gain of what they indicate should be joined, while cleaving it open to thereby profit from it. Sometimes open up and be revealing with them, sometimes close up and be guarded with them. Being open and expansive with them is to share the same sentiments. To be close and guarded with them is to differ from their intentions. As for what may and may not be done, be thoroughly clear about their plans and schemes so that you can find the basis of your similarities and differences. Reserve your disaffection and accord, and first comply with their intentions. If you want to cleave them, give value to openness. If you want to join them up, give value to secrecy. Openness and secrecy value being subtle and proceeding in tune with the Tao. To cleave someone is to measure his feelings, and to join him up is to bind his affections. When all have shown their relative weights by balance, then is it that you measure the quantities. The sage considers according to this. When the balance and measurements have not been accurate, then is it that the sage considers his own part. So it is that in cleaving open, you sometimes cleave and release things, sometimes cleave and capture things. When closing up, you sometimes close up and obtain things, sometimes close up and dispel them. Cleaving and closing up are the way of heaven and earth. Cleaving and closing up stimulate by change, just as yin and yang and the four seasons transform all things by opening and closing them, everywhere producing again and again, toppling again and again, to obstruct over and over again. It must be this way. Cleaving open and closing up are the great transformations of the Tao, as well as the permutations of persuasion. One must prepare and examine carefully these transformations and permutations, for fortune, calamity, and fate are connected to them. The mouth is the passageway of the heart. The heart is the master of the spirit. Intentions, ideas, pleasures, desires, thoughts, cares, wisdom, and schemes all pass in and out through this passageway. Therefore, restrict it using cleaving and closing up, and control it by means of what passes in and out. Cleaving things has to do with opening, with speaking, with yang. Closing things up has to do with concealing, with silence, yin. When yin and yang are in harmony, the cycle of things is proper. Therefore, to speak of long life, happiness, prosperity, respect, reputation, love, wealth, satisfaction, and expectations is act as yang and is called beginning. And so, to speak of death, misfortune, poverty, discredit, rejection, financial loss, disappointment, personal harm, corporal punishment, and official censure is to act as yin and is called ending. All references modeled upon yang are called beginning, for to speak of good is to begin an action. All references modeled upon yin are called ending, because to speak of the bad is to bring an end to a plan. That a way is cleaving or closing up may be tested by its nature as yin or yang. Therefore, when one is speaking in reference to yang, rely upon the lofty and high. When speaking in reference to yin, do so in accordance with the lowly and small. Seek the small below and the large above. If you speak in this way, there is nothing that will not come forth, nothing that will not take hold, nor anything that cannot be done. You can persuade people. You can persuade families. You can persuade states, and you can persuade the world. In acting small, let nothing be smaller. In acting large, let nothing be bigger. Advantage and disadvantage, rejecting and accepting, and denying and changing. All have their actions controlled by yin and yang. Yang stirs, and there is movement. Yin stops, and there is storing away. Yang moves, and there is production. Yin obscures, and there is retention. Yang returns, which brings an end to yin. Yin reaches its peak, and there is return to yang. When things are moved by yang, virtue is produced along with it. When things are made quiet by yin, form is constituted along with it. To seek yin with yang is to encompass with virtue. To connect yang with yin is to act with force. Yin and yang may be sought together with cleaving and closing up. This is the way of yin and yang in heaven and earth, and the method by which to persuade people. As that which is foremost among all things, it is called passageways, both round and square. That's it, read as the first chapter.
I don't know if you can hear, but I'm clapping.
Yes. I also heard you drink your bottle of water.
That wasn't me. I had my sound muted.
Oops, whoever that was. Shout out to you. Okay, yes. Anyway, yes, I kind of understood that. I'm being forced to read through the whole thing. I guess I rather understand it, but I don't know where the computers come in, though.
No, the computers. Well, there are actually like a dozen variations on this text, and the computers were mainly used just to work out which one this guy should be relying on for his translation.
See.
The round and square stuff that comes back later when it gets really arcane, which is why I didn't want to do the later chapters, because they're kind of just incomprehensible from a modern
round and
perspective.
square means heaven and earth, though, right? That's all it means.
I don't know in this context, like what if we're doing the the true name is the name that will both run and compile. Heaven and earth don't run and compile for me, but for your mileage may vary. In terms of actually, I wish this guy's dissertation that I got this translation from, it is actually really long, so I didn't compare the versions. But one thing that I did want to bring up is if we're sort of comparing versions, I find what are lines 11 and 12 in C text. In this one, it is 166. I find them very sussy baka. The stuff about to speak of long life, happiness, prosperity, respect, blah 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 is yang. That feels like a later commentary that got inserted in, because you see there's this really clear distinction in Taoist text. The earlier ones, yin is not necessarily bad. It's
no.
There's
Not
this very
necessarily.
sort of almost Hindu-like idea of creative destruction going on. But in the later texts, yin is clearly bad and to be avoided at all costs, and so on. And it's it comes with this list of qualities that is all like wet and female and disgusting.
Just call back to the Neijing. At this very moment, I'm overcoming the over yang of curry with the yin of orange juice. Carry on.
Oh, congratulations!
Got to close that up, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway.
Well,
anyway.
I don't know if Yang's always disagrees with me on the dating of these things. So maybe he has a take. I'm not sure. Or anyone else, in fact.
I don't. Well, I mean, what's the take here? What's the take that's yes.
Just take on the text. One I would say that's happened recently that I noticed is something I've been thinking about recently regarding the various subtle meanings of two words which are very uncommon in modern American parlance. The first being gainsay, which is a real word, and the second being countersignaling, which is a word only used by very discreditable people on their live streams. And I think even then there's two kinds of gainsaying. There's gainsaying where you openly contradict someone, or you openly push back, or you, one way Tolkien liked to use the word gainsay was that a gainsay would be a limitation on a doom. So if someone pronounced judgment, the gainsaying would be the circumscription, or it would work to circumscribe the judgment. But it also, especially this chapter, mentions another kind of gainsaying, which is twisting someone's words to mean something different in a different sense. And here it seems to suggest that the ruler or whoever is issuing these statements, because it's unclear if this is a ruler or just a man trying to make decisions about his own house or just to face the public in some sense. He seems to be suggesting that you should speak as if you were open to being gainsaid or even contradicted or having your words twisted. And then as the situation develops, you should, if anything, gainsay yourself by changing your own ambiguous judgment to suit reality as it actually occurs. Because this entire chapter seems to be about discourse and how you should stimulate discourse using the yang and using rewards and speaking of positive things, and you should constrain, or actually the opening would be, I think, it wasn't, what was our special word? It wasn't, but the constraining I know was definitely joining.
Cleaving and
cleaving,
joining.
Yeah. So, yeah, cleaving and joining, yeah. So this entire chapter seems to be about cleaving and joining discourse through talk of rewards on the one hand and punishments on the other. And moreover, it also seems to be suggesting, almost in a legalist sense, that you should, although this is not a legalist text, that you should apply that to discourse itself and even to your own statements, so that you can allow them to be interpreted after the fact as they need to be in order to match the situation that you find yourself facing.
Yeah, I think it's what is really interesting here is the sort of what is unsaid. So you have the rewards and punishments, and you have the openness and closingness and all the rest of it. But if we tie this into the stratagems, the stratagems are very, very much reason based, I guess. So if you're a wandering persuader in the stratagems and you go to some foreign king and you're presenting him with a suggestion, that suggestion has to be a minimally good suggestion vis-a-vis of reality, or you're not going to get anywhere with it. So which is why you see stuff. You see stuff like the Zhangguo Canal getting built, which was, you know, the plan to build the Zhangguo Canal. Originally, it was a Han attempt to kind of tie up Qin resources for a few years. But in order to have any success with that plan, the plan had to have like minimally good qualities to convince Qin that, yeah, this is a logical thing to do. And then Qin tied up the resources, and it was a short-term stumbling block, but a long-term gain. So that is why you kind of get stuff like this, and it's all very game theory and logic and objective. Whereas this is all emotional. This is describing a scene that we pretty much never see in the stratagems, which is two people talking informally in private and reaching an emotional entente. We see it a couple of times. There's I think the Caizhi chapter has it, but that is one of the very rare instances. Otherwise, we get this very sort of abstract Taoist description of it, but we don't really know 100% how it works, except via that one chapter, pretty much. But yeah, I think Yangzi, you had something.
Oh no, yeah. Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah.
Right now, but if the connection is not clear, maybe I should reboot. No, just if you asked me about this dating issue and probably also the affiliation, I don't think Brochard himself is that strict on assigning a lot of the text to post warring states. Actually, I think what he says, it's more of a continuum, and that's probably also what I could follow from a kind of cursory reading of the text. There's a lot of it that you can link to, especially the later part of the warring states, already with this whole discourse about yin and yang. But also it has many connections to the Zhuangzi and to the Laozi as well. That specific part that you cited, yeah, I can follow your reasoning, but I'm not really convinced that that's not already occurring in the warring states, where you have a kind of certain associations with yin and certain associations with yang. For example, yin, there are texts that link it clearly to punishments, and yang clearly to rewards already in the warring state. So that's not that convincing to me.
True, but
it doesn't.
I want to jump in with this. I feel like that is not incompatible with a neutral perspective, in the sense of positive and negative reinforcement, which is kind of something that we get wrong even today. So everyone assumes that negative reinforcement is punishment and positive is rewards, and actually it's the misunderstanding the concept. But
this chapter
I think it still works.
It's not strictly negative about yin at all. For example, it links this yin thing with, if I'm saying that correctly, with Qing, which you can translate as feelings, but you can also translate it as the genuine condition of things, which is definitely already a warring states theme. So it's, if you want to read this as a kind of a neutral method of persuasion, it's not that yin is something that is solely in this negative hook of corner of punishments or of concealing, etc. All these associations that you get with yin. I think it's very much a balanced approach that the text itself takes vis-a-vis yin and yang. But the other thing that I would kind of add, I feel it's not really helpful to try to push this text in squarely a Taoist corner, or for example a so-called or legalist corner, or this so-called Zongheng tradition. It's very much a mix. You can say, oh, it in many cases it inclines towards Taoist themes, the female, etc., the concealed, but it's also open at the same time to a lot of other perspectives, and it's very flexible in its approach. And in that sense, it is more of this kind of neutral methodology of persuasion that is not really tied to one specific worldview or doctrine, which is quite amazing for the text, from even from the Han era, if you want to put it in that time. So I think it's not really helpful to say, okay, we have to only look at it from a so-called Taoist perspective. The text wasn't categorized as such until after the Han, if you go through the textual history. And its association with the so-called Zongheng school is very much a kind of syncretic whole of ideas and strategies.
Hi, I'm back.
I just saw in the discourse it's infecting everything. In the Discord, you missed that whole thing.
Oh, well, it's recorded, thank goodness. And I agree.
It was essentially Yangs are arguing that in the Han Dynasty, people were already seeing yin as bad.
No, not as bad. Bad is the wrong term. I don't think in this chapter yin is portrayed as bad at all. There's no
in those two lines it clearly is. No, in those two lines it clearly is. In the rest of it, it's very neutral, which is why I think those two lines are outliers.
Well, yin can also it's not always negative, but it can be negative.
If you talk about things like death, punishment, harm, for example, something that is not tied to the Guǐgǔzi, but let's say the Confucian tradition, they would talk about a certain season for punishments, for death, let's say autumn and winter, and that's just part of life. It's not something that is to be avoided at all cost. It's just the association. Part of life is that there needs to be punishments. Part of life is that there will be harm, that there will be death, that there will be. You cannot have a production of life without a destruction of life that comes afterwards and then leads up to the positive again. But if you would say something is clearly negative, then I would ask, where in the text would it say avoid yin, don't do yin? That would be negative. Just the fact that it associates yin with death and punishment by itself.
Just to be absolutely clear, in this one particular section, he's not talking about the inflicting of death and punishment. He's talking about speaking of that in council or one-on-one while you're trying to persuade someone as a method of imposing discipline. And I don't know if discipline is bad, but it is clearly in this text, it is a joining action that shuts down the conversation and stabilizes it where you need the conversation to be stable.
The first part, I would agree with you. But that's last part where you say shutting down conversation, I'm not entirely. I didn't pick that up from the text. So then I would ask where exactly do you get this shutting down of conversation from? Because you can interpret this joining or this closing also as a different rhetorical persuasive technique, not necessarily about shutting down conversation. And that kind of ties in one question I have to your earlier analysis, cultural literati, that you gave about what is the perspective of this text, of a ruler or of someone who does the persuasion. And I'm not really convinced, although it is an interesting perspective, that we should read this as a ruler who decides and kind of steers and guides conversation, for example, at this court between advisors. You could also read this from the perspective of the so-called wandering persuader, which would be tied much more to the stories of the Guǐgǔzi, for example. So I'm not really sure that we should primarily read closing as the closing of conversation. It could just as well be as the kind of the unifying of opinions, which is something like cleaving has to do with separating points of views, and closing has to do with bringing together, with joining points of views. That's a different interpretation of be and her, of joining, of cleaving and joining in this case.
Right. I recognize your point about it's not being clear whether we should talk about this person being a ruler or a prime minister or even just a wandering courtier or persuader. Like, that's the point. It's not clear what perspective is being adopted here. So we could call them the wandering persuader by as a shorthand, but it's not clear, since this appears to just be a commentary on discourse itself in a collective setting. And you talk about, and for anyone at all to talk about punishments would be a joining act, whether it would be the ruler or even just a low courtier who might express a personal fear of that. This is a very abstract. This is a very strange passage, because it's both abstract, but it's also quite systematic and practical in how it approaches its analysis of discourse.
My one problem with that is that even though it's very abstract and general, that I can concede, but it does use certain terms that are tied to specific kind of discourse, and just the basic fundamental one in this whole text is sure, to persuade. And if you look at the practice of persuasion in early China, that was never done by a ruler. That was always done by advisors, or, for example, by these by ministers, but never by the ruler itself. The ruler, in terms of discourse, what the ruler does is, in Chinese, is called lun, to adjudicate, to decide, to judge discourse. And that term lun, it is used in the Guǐgǔzi, but it's much less of a focus than sure, to persuade. So in that sense, even though this first chapter, it's interesting that it starts out from the perspective of the sage, and that is usually more tied to the ruler. But if you go with a kind of a later dating of this text, as at earliest a later Warring States text, and then evolving into a Han text, or even later, there's already a separation from the figure of the sage and the ruler. A persuader in that sense can also be a sage. The texts don't really have any problem with that. So if I take the focus on this, in this text, on persuasion, I feel it's a little bit less completely general a theory of discourse in total, but it's specifically a theory of persuasion. And that is really from a, let's say, subordinate position, trying to convince someone in power to do something.
There's one thing that I have to push back absolutely on, because there's a line either from the first chapter or the second, probably the first, that explicitly mentions the use of secrecy in order to win people's affections, and the implication there is that it's a matter of confidence, and that's absolutely a relationship between a ruler and his subjects.
Yeah, I'm not that convinced that secrecy wasn't part of the art of persuasion. You see that many times mentions in anecdotes about persuasion, where it's not the ruler who has to be secret. Especially, in the traditional account of the Guǐgǔzi, this was tied to diplomacy, where secrecy was also of crucial importance. So from let's say from a legalist perspective that you could see in the Hanveze, then clearly secrecy is used with a focus on the position of the ruler. And I'm not saying that it doesn't play in here as well, but I'm also, if you want to say, okay, this is completely neutral, then you have to account for specific focus in the text. You can't just gloss over them and say, there is a line that also applies to the ruler. Okay, but argumentatively, there are focus in the text that coming back and back again, and then you also have to acknowledge that, or else you're just cutting a lot of the text away.
Okay, I did want to go back to yin and yang as good and bad, because I haven't finished with this. One thing that I did want to bring up, particularly in light of the, does this work? Does this compile? Does this run? Question, and the way that the definition of yin and yang kind of shifted over time. The fact that my feeling is that in the earlier text, what we see is yin and yang have an almost assembly theory like connection. So you've got a sort of R selection phenomenon going on, wherein spamming attempts is one part of creation, but pruning out the bad attempts, that is equally important and equally creative. Selecting selecting out the bad ones, and that is why this creative destruction thing works, and that is really kind of emphasized in the earlier texts, I think. And whereas in the later texts, people nod to, oh yeah, no, you need yin as well. It's not necessarily bad, but then they go and list a whole lot of bad things with no upside that are associated with yin. Which, the feeling I get is that the concept shifted to mean that yin is just pure badness, and people just kind of in an almost hippie-ish way are like, well, universe needs dualism, bad, whatever. There's no rigorous mathematical logic underneath it all, which I feel like there is in the earlier texts. So that is kind of
but
my
how do you square that with for example the Huainanzi, which is a Han text, or how do you square that, for example, with the Chunchu Fanlu, which has the exact same valuation, the kind of valuation of yin that you just said? I don't really see that in the Han text as a problem. And even this one chapter that we read just now, if we would accept your perspective on yin, the so-called earlier perspective on yin, where exactly, besides an association with things like harm, does it contradict that perspective? Because if you talk about creative destruction, then how could you not accept something like creative harm or creative punishment? You will never find in any early Chinese text an exact equation of a word of creative destruction. It's something that you interpret into destruction as yin. But you can perfectly do that with this argument as well. There's no clear, explicit denial of that kind of reasoning.
Yeah. So what I would argue is that these texts are supposed to be functional. Every sentence is a line of code that is supposed to influence the reader to do or not do something, and change the way that their brain works. So we can't. That means we can't take the text word for word at face value, because we have to consider as well what they're not just a description. They are, I don't know, what is the equivalent of performative when the performance is being done by someone else. But sorry, got a request. Let me add in the request. So yeah, the functional, and it means that the poetic stuff that is not necessarily needed, like the list of stuff here, that is designed to do something, and it's in there for a reason, to persuade and so on. So you can't say, if you say, oh yeah, yin is neutral, and then you list it with a whole bunch of things that are bad, you're doing two separate things at once. Your sentence will compile, but it won't run.
No, but that's different. It's not
and
about
something
that yin
that,
is neutral.
No.
That's not the
No,
argument.
I think
the argument is that
what we
yin
need to
and
do
yang
here,
are both valued.
No, they're not. No, I think originally they were, and I think there's undergone a shift, and what it reminds me of a lot is the discourse around motherhood. No one will not say, oh, being a mother is the most valuable job in the world, and it's worth $1 million and so on. And everyone says that, and it's all wonderful. And except in reality, it is worth $0, and you spend your entire time cleaning up shit. So we have this parallelism going on where the discourse says one thing, but then it contradicts itself in the actual examples that it gives. So
can I chime in?
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Just I'm not sure. Well, it seems to me you guys are assuming the yin and the yang mean the same things from the beginning of the text to the end, but they can be
my assumption is that this text is probably a text and a commentary, and the commentary had a different take on what yin and yang were to the original text. But yeah,
right, I get that. But what I mean is they can refer to different orders of things, right? Different dimensions, as it were, and in the beginning and towards the end. And what I mean is, well, weirdly, the best way I can think of to explain this is to introduce a Roman perspective. So Cicero, in his version, he talked about ethos, pathos, and logos, right? So it says ethos, and we have logos and pathos. Logos is argument by reasoning, so logical persuasion, and pathos is argument by emotions, by making people feel certain ways. And so it seems to me at least plausible that when you're looking earlier in the text here, so line 6 in C text, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the Chinese original here, so not the translation, but 百之者料其情也，合之者竭其诚也. So one is looking at emotion, and one is looking at, well, the word here is cheng, sincerity, but I guess you can interpret that as logical reasoning. So you could say you could assign one of those to the yang and one of those to the yin, right? One is yang, I'm not sure which is which here, but one is logical reasoning and one is appeal to passion, appeal to feelings. And then later on, the lines you guys are arguing over, and that you think it might be a later commentary, lines 10 and 11. Then he's talking about if we take by emotions, appeals to positive emotions, the yang, and then appeals to negative emotions, the yin, and that would that all makes sense to me, at least.
I do agree that it's a very good point to look at these different dimensions of the associations between yin and yang, and that you have different orders. Specifically with regards to qing and cheng, or as you say, feelings and quote unquote logic or something like that. Yeah, I think that's true, but I would interpret it differently. It's not that cheng has so much to do with logical reasoning, But specifically, if you look at the art of the phenomenon of speech and of persuasion, or the phenomenon of discourse, if you want to give it a generic theme, then Cheng has to do with what you say is truthful. So that someone hears you say it and say, okay, I believe you because there is no doubt of insincerity in your words. Whereas with Qing, you are able to convey your condition or the condition of the world in a way that affects the listener of your words. So in that sense, there's a contrast between Cheng and Qing, which you can then tie to yin and yang as active, passive, quiet, and with sound, for example. But that has, I believe there is one interpreter or one translation that really ties Cheng to this idea of reasoning, but that doesn't make sense from the context of early Chinese discourse on Cheng, on this, what is translated as sincerity. I would translate it as truthfulness. But also this connection of Qing specifically with feelings is basically a much later conceptualization of Qing. Originally in the early Chinese context, already also in the later Warring States period, Qing primarily has to do with the genuine condition of things, which then will have an automatic effect. And that's why we tie it to things like emotions or dispositions. Disposition is a much neutraler, I think, more appropriate translation for Qing if you want to tie it to affectation and emotion. But yeah, I do agree with you that it's better to not think that the author tries to interpret yin and yang as only these two sets in that specific passage that we were arguing about, but that is just simply one way that yin and yang manifests itself. And it's not that yin is ought to be good or bad or neutral. It's more that there is, according to the reasoning of this chapter itself, there is a place for what the text considers the dimensions of yin, and there is a place in discourse for the dimensions of yang, and it's perfectly balanced. There's no, I don't see any explicit rejection of the yin perspective at all. And in that sense, actually, there's more of a valuation of the yin dimension, which how you can tie this text more to the, let's say, the Lao Tzu tradition, or even the Han Feizi tradition of persuasion. But there's no rejection at all, even though it's associated with terms that, you know, we consider to be negative.
So from the emotional perspective, I would like to read a bit of the. So I mentioned the Caizi versus Fanzhu chapter of the stratagems, which is kind of one of the rare occasions where we get to see two people persuading each other in private. Actually, no, there is another one. There's another one where Fanzhu, I think, comes in and persuades Zhao Xiang. So it's from the same cycle, basically. Actually, maybe I should read that instead. I don't know. Yeah, possibly, because that one, yeah, I am gonna go back and read not the Caizi one, which is also good. I'm gonna read the Fanzhu one, and now I can't find it. So. Okay, yeah, so this is split into two chapters. The first one is Fanzhu, who's a wandering persuader. He's been kicked out of his own original country, which is Wei, after being accused of treason. And he arrives in Qin, and he kind of realizes that the king of Zhao Xiang, who's quite young at the time, is being taken advantage of by his mother and her relations. And he, rather than necessarily sort of doing a very logical persuasion like a lot of the other strategists in the stratagems do, he very much leans on emotion. And there's this really nice description where he's almost kind of seducing Jiaxiang. So I'll just read this. Fanju arrived in Qin, where the king welcomed him to his court and spoke to him, saying, "We should have received your instruction in person a long time ago, but recently the Yichu affair has been pressing, and we have had to have audiences with the Queen Dowager every day. Now that the Yichu business is settled, I can finally receive your instructions face to face. I privately worry that I am not a quick thinker, but I will bring with me all the courtesy due of a host to a guest." Fanju thanked him and withdrew, which is a bit of etiquette. Among those who saw Fanju that day, there was no one who did not regard him as a different man. The king of Qin put up folding screens to keep out his entourage so that the palace was empty, and there were no other people in the vicinity. So this would have been something like the grand halls in the Forbidden City today, where it's essentially one big room with pillars and so on. So he could do this. He kneeled and made his request. "With what teachings do you intend to grace us, Your Excellency?" Fanju said, "Well," and the moment dragged out. The king repeated his request, and Fanju said, "Well." This happened a third time. The king of Qin, kneeling, said, "You do not intend to favor us with your teachings?" Fanju said, "I would not dare refrain. Your servant has heard that when..." And then he goes into a whole long list of historical examples of why he should be reticent. And then he's sort of, we see them going back and forward and gradually building up a level of trust in a way that is very very reminiscent of this Guǐgǔzi chapter. I won't read the whole thing because it is actually very long. Rules, you're requesting to speak, but for some reason I can't approve you. I don't know why. Do you want to undo your request and make a new one? So yeah, and we see the sort of the key part is about halfway through Fanju's speech. He lists all of these examples of ministers who died for their rulers. So, death is the one human certainty that cannot be avoided. Standing under the compulsion of this force of nature, if there is any small thing I can do to assist Qin, that is my greatest wish. Why would I worry? Wu Zixu hid in a sack to get through the Zhao Pass, traveling at night and hiding during the day to reach Lingshui. With nothing to eat, he fell to the ground and went begging for food, eating in the markets of Wu, then led the restoration of the state of Wu and made King Helu the hegemon. If I could obtain the opportunity to put forth my strategies like Wu Zixu, then even if I am imprisoned and never seen again to the end of my days, even under such circumstances, as long as my arguments are followed, why would I grieve, etc., etc. And it's worth noting that Fanju was extremely corrupt. He's kind of, a paragon of the opposite of ministerial virtue. So all of this is actually, it's a pure emotional appeal. It's not what he actually did when he got into power. And then after he's been in power for a while, things are getting a bit hot for him because he's been appointing all of his friends to jobs that they're incompetent at. And Caizi sees this and comes and takes advantage. So Caizi was expelled from Zhao and went to Han and Wei, where he happened to be robbed of a bronze cauldron. He had heard that Marcus Ying, who is Fanju, had given responsibility for this area to Zhang Anping and Wang Ji, both of whom were guilty of serious crimes, and Fanju was self-conscious about this in Qin. Accordingly, Caizi decided to head west into Qin. He intended to seek an audience with King Zhao, sending people to spread word in a way calculated to anger Fanju. Caizi is a visitor from Yan, the most awe-inspiring rhetorician in all under heaven. If he secures a single audience with the king of Qin, the king will certainly make him chancellor, and he will steal Fanju's position. Marcus Ying heard of this, and he sent someone to summon Caizi. Caizi entered and bowed briefly, calculated to cause offense. Ma Kuxi's displeasure was reinforced. During the audience, Caizi was even more arrogant. Fanju invited Caizi to speak, saying, "You have been spreading the word that you will replace me as chancellor. Is this so?" Caizi replied, "It is." Ma Kuxi said, "Permit me to hear your persuasions." Caizi said, "How slow your lordship is to perceive things. The 4 seasons have their sequence, and all success is fleeting. To be born," and he goes on and does this long argument about how Fanju has been pushing his luck for too long, and he's about to get executed. Which, yeah, after a while works, and Fanju offers his resignation in favor of Caizi. But the whole sort of interest in this is A, that both of these are kind of very emotional arguments rather than rational ones. But B, that I feel like they really tie back to something that that I may have interpreted into the text, but whatever. Yangzi will say that I did. This R selection theme, where you begin by opening up the possibilities that are on the table, and then you prune them back in such a way as to push the person towards your favored option. So in each case, we see the persuader laying out a bunch of options, and then gradually narrowing them down as if they come to an inevitable conclusion, which they actually don't. It's sort of pure emotion in both cases, but it does actually work. And what is quite nice, because the other thing that this kind of raises is this was like the equivalent of a published book. Obviously, they didn't have publishers, but it was a book that was spread around. So presumably, persuaders on all sides had access to these techniques and these texts, and they all knew, they could all identify what other people were trying on them when they were trying it on. And you do actually see this with Caizi and Fanju here, where Caizi kind of baits Fanju into granting him an audience by being offensive. But then Fanju attempts to bait Caizi into fucking up by giving him the audience and requesting to hear his arguments. So yeah, it's very nice illustration, I guess. So yeah, I just wanted to do that. I don't know if anyone else has something, or shall we go on to question chapter 2? Except Rules of Chinese can't read. Oh, he's a speaker now. Okay, good.
Hi, I can speak
So,
now.
yeah.
Yay!
Anyway, yeah. I guess that was my interpretation of yin and yang in this case, the flourishing and the pruning, which is why I guess that is how I would see the earlier stratum of the text reading, and then
Well, it can be all of it.
Later one is more like
Woo.
is more, I don't know, mundane.
Woo.
I guess, I don't know. It's less enchanting. Yeah, it's and woo as well. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually been thinking, this is sidebar. The whole thing about obviously referencing gentleman villains is a part of the yin and yang text for a very long time, in the I Ching as well. So that's old. And it just struck me that what if when they say villain, they didn't necessarily mean a moral villain? What if they just meant like your opponent? I don't know, just sidebar.
Actually, that's depending on how they translated it, that would villain would probably just mean a low person, which could mean a criminal, or it could mean like a peasant or something like that. That would be the English conceptual note, not the Chinese conceptual note. Although I do believe that the Chinese for villain is xiaoran, but you'd have to ask Yang Zhongnu for that.
No, villain as in the criminal sense. They have words for that, things like Jen or what's the other, the Dao, or the other one Zei. Zei is usually translated as villain, and Xiaoren is actually part of the populace of the community. It's basically anyone who is not in charge, who is not having wisdom, etc. It's not portrayed, I think, in any text as someone who is doing villainous acts per se. I mean, a villain is usually a Shaoran, but it's not that a Shaoran is usually a villain. It's like it's different sets of people. But where in the Guǐgǔzi does it use or is it translated as villain? Which word are we talking about? Because I didn't see that in the.
Oh, I was just talking about. We mentioned that yin yang gets referenced as evil and like totally undesirable at some point. So
well, that is maybe one thing I would challenge XCB then on. Okay, so if you want to say there's two strata of the text, an earlier conception of yin and yang and a later conception of yin and yang. In this first chapter, there is one passage that talks about the good, quote unquote, or shan, and the bad, and that comes after this summation or association of yin and yang that we just discussed. And it seems to run through this whole second half of the first chapter. So then I guess, XCB, you would consider the entire second half of this chapter to be a later stratum. Because if you first it talks about yin as having to do with talking about the bad, and then later it also talks about using force in combination with yin. So that's all part of this kind of association that you can then link to punishment, etc., etc. That runs through the entire.
No. I think the whole part, and I know which bit you mean. Like I think that makes sense within this sort of R selection context. So and this is a part of my sort of argument, which I know you disagree with, but I would argue that the meaning of the word is the one that works in a given context, and in this sense, yeah, I can make this fit with the overall R selection theme that is going on here.
I don't disagree with this. I actually think that's a nice interpretation, and it's kind of how I read it as well. I would maybe use a more word cell way of saying it, but yeah, it's this kind of R selection way of persuasion is exactly what this chapter is already about. But I don't see a necessary contradiction by that specific passage. You can also make that work exactly in the way that you just say now, by not reading it literally as punishment belongs to this category, moral category, and that belongs to that moral category. It's very much an amoral use of these terms. You can, in the same way as you can make bad and good fit that R selection interpretation, you could do the same thing with that other stuff as well. And it is part of that second half, which again and again uses this kind of imagery. So if you want to say, okay, that is a later stratum, then I could make the same case about much of the second half from that same way of thinking, but it's still not in contradiction of your original interpretation. It's not a problem. At least I don't see it.
I do feel like the list of qualities can, it can fit with the whole R selection thing, because that, it is one continuous intellectual tradition. So it'd be weird if it didn't fit. But my other argument would be that this is a book about rhetoric and emotions. So the author, or the authors plural, knew that if they just describe this in very bland creative destruction terms, it's going to create a very different impression on the reader than if they describe it with a list of bad things. So I think that also needs to be taken into account. But yeah, no, they're not necessarily incompatible. I think it's a development of a tradition. It's not a reversal of one, I guess.
And also thank you for the tips about that the I Ching references only lesser men, which is useful, because I've always thought villain was didn't really fit what I was saying. Okay.
Well, one thing about the I Ching reference, you should kind of specify it. It has to do with the commentary on the I Ching, not so much, except maybe for the certain line explanations of the Chen hexagram. But specifically, this idea of cleaving and joining or opening and closing is something that only pops up in the appended phrases commentary on the I Ching, on the Zhou. So that kind of fits the chronological dating of a late Warring States text. It's very much compatible in that sense with this kind of cosmological theorizing that you find in the commentaries on the Zhou, and for example in a lot of these yin and yang theories that are related to the later half of the Warring States.
I just think about that. Comments from Discord, because I want to read them. Catcher says, side note, since William Hahn mentioned Cicero, this must be when I was on my AFK break, the negative view towards Guǐgǔzi in Chinese vibes is interesting, given how the Romans learned rhetoric, and everyone in the Senate or higher levels also could all see what tricks or tactics the other side was using. They could even praise or compliment their opponent's masterful use, whereas in Confucian school of thought, this would be bad. And then Shishir says, same with, quote, faction is evil versus let's have institutional political parties, which was arguably the central dilemma. I apologize, the gods are angry for me reading this, which was arguably the central dilemma which caused the collapse of Imperial Japan. I can't read the next comment. But anyway, okay, yeah, that's also just another, fun thought. If the court of the Qin been knowing about this rhetoric stuff, and then they were asked deer or horse, what do you think they would have said? Do you think they would have just called it out? They would have been like, we know what you're doing, stop what you're doing. It's fake and joyous.
Can I just, since it's responsive to what I said?
Oh, sure, yes.
Can I just chime in here? Yeah, right. I mean, Cicero was like a publicity whore, right? I mean, he hurriedly published everything, every speech he made in the Senate. He hurriedly had it all published and basically sent around, everybody, who was anybody. And so it's not like when people know what you're doing, it doesn't work. That sophists in ancient Greece so compelling. It's like, yeah, because even if you know it, even today, I mean, speaking as someone who studied law, we still study Cicero in law school, and again, it's not like all this stuff isn't in textbooks, but it still works on juries. It still works in the courtroom. Everybody knows what you're doing. And it, in ancient Greece, as in ancient China, it's the amoral dimension that the ethicists, the Confucians, objected to, right? This is all technique. There's no moral content to it. It can be used one way or the other. It just happens to work.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I think it's in Brochard's dissertation that he really makes the point of reading the Guǐgǔzi as this amoral way of, not immoral, but literally amoral. It's not about good or bad, but it's just for the purpose that you want to use persuasion, that you can use this method. There's another dissertation about the Guǐgǔzi that I really like, is by a guy called Daniel Coyle. It's written in the 90s. And he really reads this theory of persuasion in the Guǐgǔzi from a cosmological perspective. And one point he makes that I personally find quite convincing is that, yes, it's not about this dichotomy between good and bad that the Guǐgǔzi doesn't take a side on, just like certain chapters in the Zhuangzi. But from a cosmological perspective, you could say that, according to the author or authors of the Guǐgǔzi, this theory is the right way, in the sense that this is the way that nature operates. The same thing with yin-yang and closing and opening is what you should also follow in persuasion. And in that sense, it's kind of, I feel it's a little bit too strong to say it is amoral or even immoral. It's more that, according to this worldview, what is, quote unquote, the good is how nature, or how the universe, or however you want to frame this total picture of reality, operates. And that's what you also should follow in your persuasion. So in that sense, you could say it is moral from that perspective, because it is in line with how nature itself operates.
Well, that just reminds me of the bit in the Dao De Jing, right? 天地不仁, right? Heaven and earth are not benevolent, right? The world is what it is, and if you take the nature of the world as moral in and of itself, then whatever works is in that sense moral, right?
Yeah, that's a very good other example. And as in the Zhuangzi, you have this similar narratives, I feel. So yes, from a if you want to dissect, let's say, nature and morality, then it would be amoral or immoral. But if you look at this, I think, is it Coyle or Brossard that talks about the point of persuasion is that it is effective, efficacy. And in that sense, you just make use of the opportunity that is given in a discursive context, a bit like what XCB, the example that you used from the Guǐgǔzi. And there is no fixed perspective in discourse. It's always changing, and you should look for the opportunity, or what the Guǐgǔzi called the interval in a discussion or in a discursive context. And that makes it effective. And what is effective is good. And then you can call what is good moral, but it doesn't really matter. But it's not necessarily strictly immoral in a descriptive sense.
If I may interject, a comment from Discord by Edward. Yangzi, may I ask if you could direct me or us to the discussion on the Guǐgǔzi by Daniel Coyle? ? Is there a link you can provide us in Discord?
I can post the dissertation later. I have it on a hard drive somewhere.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Thank you. Do I need to space fill? Is that? Oh, at the side, you want to have another one? No. Okay. Let us see. In the Discord, some callback to someone having an audience with the Queen Dowager. I can't read out that word, but basically they're kids. DCAM posted the method of turning strategies with the fierce beast. Do we want to do the second chapter? We're already running into 1.5 hours. Do we want to do the second chapter? Or?
Yeah, it might be a bit much. Shall we just read? We'll read it quickly, because we'll read it. I don't think there's a lot to add, but I would like to get done.
Oh, sure. Let me see. It's 7 pages though, and this is not as footnotey. You want me to read it like straight through?
Yeah. Let's go straight through.
Okay, hold on. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay. Sorry about this. Hold on. Technical difficulties as per usual. What else is new, right? Okay. Okay. I'll read it faster this time. So this will be ASMR. You're trying to wake up. Well, what is it about? Do you want to just say first what it's about, or should I just read it first?
Oh, it's kind of the same as chapter 1. So yeah, I don't know.
It's a continuation. Okay. Second Yuan turned back for response. The great transformations of old came about together with formlessness. One turns back in order to observe the past, turns forward in order to verify the future, turns back to know antiquity, turns forward to know the present, turns back to know the other, and turns forward to know the self. When the inner principles of movement and quiescence, emptiness and substance do not accord with the present, turn back to the past and seek them. It is the intention of the sage that an affair for which one has looked back will result in going forward, and this must be pursued. The words of others are movement. Your own silence is quiescence. Follow what they say, listen to their words. When the words do not come together, seek them in reflection. There is certain to be a response. A word has its manifestation. An event has its counterpart. By their having manifestations and counterparts may we observe their progression. Manifestations mirror their events, and counterparts parallel their words. Seek sound by means of formlessness. When angling words accord with an affair, one may know the real nature of someone. It is like setting out nets to capture animals. Set out as many opportunities as possible, and watch over them. When this path combines with their business, the target will himself come out with it. This is the net with which to angle for people. Regularly maintain this net and drive people toward it. If they do not speak, there is no counterpart, so make them change course. Stimulate them with your words, so they will announce what is in their hearts. When you have seen their feelings, follow along and nurture them. When you cast back to the past, they will turn forward to the future. When words have manifestations and counterparts, follow them and establish your base. Build upon it, attach to it, turn it around, and then turn it back again. In a myriad events, your words will never fail you, and there will be no doubts about all affairs where the sage induces both the stupid and the wise. Thus, those who are good at reflecting upon what they have heard could even stimulate ghosts and spirits and learn their feelings. When their stimulus is to the point, their control is thorough. When control has not been thorough, there is an unclear idea of the feelings involved. And when that happens, the base established is not complete. When you vary manifestations and counterparts, there are certain to be words in reaction. Listen to them as they return to you. If you wish to hear a sound, be quiet in contrast. If you wish tension, be composed in contrast. If you wish height, prepare with shortness. If you wish to obtain, begin with giving. Those who would open up feelings, make them manifest, and give them counterparts in order to nurture the relevant words. Similar sounds call out to each other. Substance and principle come together. Sometimes they follow this one, at other times that one, sometimes serving the noble, sometimes controlling the lesser. This is all to hear the true and the false, to know what is similar and what is different, and to understand true feeling and falsity. One's movement and actions, speech and silence, alternate according to this principle, and a joy and anger in this way reveal their patterns. They all make their rules and principles through prior stipulation. By turning back, seek a turning forward, and one may observe that on which true feelings rest. Therefore, those who would use these principles pacify and calm their own desires in order to hear what is said, to examine activities, to discuss all things, and to distinguish male from female. Although these things are not the matter at hand, by seeing the subtle, you shall know the greater significance. If in probing other people, you can reach within them, evaluate their abilities, determine their intentions, then confirmation will not be lost. Just like the way the Teng snake points, and the way Yi aims his arrows. Therefore, to know things, begin with oneself. Know yourself first, then know about others. This two-part understanding is like the paired eyes fish. The appearance it takes on is like light with shadows, and in the scrutiny of what is said, nothing is missed. It is like lodestone attracting a needle, and the tongue seeking barbecued ribs. Be subtle with others, be quick to sense feelings, like yin is with yang and round with square. When things have not yet appeared, be encompassing in approaching them. Once seen, be direct in dealing with them. By advancing, then retreating, then left, then right. That is how one manages things. But if you do not first establish yourself, your control of others will not be right. If affairs are handled unskillfully, that is what we call neglecting feelings and losing the way. Carefully establish yourself first to control others. When prodding without apparent purpose, no one will see the opening. That is what is called spirits from heaven.
Okay, I wanted to do this not. Thank you for the reading, by the way. Yeah. I wanted to do this not because it necessarily adds a huge amount to to sort of the substantive logic of it, but because it's very sexy, so it's very sort of tactile and enjoyable, which I feel like. I mean, and not to crap on the Who translation, but I feel like the Who translation loses a lot of that. The thing about barbecue ribs is
hilarious.
The barbecue ribs thing is accurate. It's not even a modern insertion. It's genuinely barbecue ribs.
Okay, I mean, they couldn't choose something a bit more. It's a bit clumsy reading it though. Like lodestone attracting a needle, so it's so like gentle, and then you go the tongue seeking barbecue ribs. Like we know what barbecued ribs is, so it works. But tongue seeking barbecue ribs, man. Like you couldn't just say like, I don't know. I guess there's nothing elegant to say if it's food, right? There's nothing elegant. You can't say what.
No,
like
I think
That's why I think the Who translation is so bad.
Who is probably better? Who is better for this just one thing? Who is like picking meat off the bones or something like that with your tongue? So that's probably quite a bit better. Yeah.
The tongue sticking to a well-cooked bone to suck out its juice.
Ooh.
That's
better. In the original classical Chinese, you have this verb "chew," right, and which is and then Brosgaard translates the first "chew" in this parallel line as attracting the needle. That doesn't really cover the original classical Chinese meaning of "chew" in this sense. It is subtracting rather than attracting. So then the second one, what in classical Chinese is "chu pangu." Well, barbecued ribs. I mean, you would have to. It's basically indeterminable because it's such an obscure term that it originally referred to cow roe, to this kind of roasted meat, or what Hu goes with, which fits better the use of chu in that second line as sucking out, chu xi. So in that sense, I don't know why you. If it's just the style of Hu, I can okay, maybe that's true, but for the accuracy of the classical Chinese translation, I feel it's up to par with Brosgaard. I think both are doing quite well, and they have certain terms that they translate differently and that you can argue about, but overall it's not a bad translation at all.
It's not terrible or anything.
It's not bad,
but it's I don't know, it doesn't turn me on in the same way that Brosgaard does, and I think that's a crucial component of this. It does need to be sexy. I would say, Brosgaard did fuck up his barbecue ribs. I will say that. Whose version of that is better?
I don't think there's an elegant way to refer to food that isn't also direct. Like the only way to be elegant with a food item is to be very indirect. So I think if I said like a foreign food and you didn't know exactly what it was, it would sound elegant. But I know what barbecue ribs is, so it doesn't sound elegant. But that's just the part of it. I don't think
the literal classical Chinese is basically a curled bone or a curled rib. Pangu would mean, and he had the author of that text seems like he had to use this specific description of a compound of pangu, of curled ribs, to match the parallel word count with the other one, because the first line uses if, and then it uses magnetic stone, which is a compound. But then in the second line you have if, and then you have just tong, which is not a compound, it's just a single word. So he had to insert another word to make the word count match the parallel style. But yeah, that obviously it's probably not an originally well-attested compound. It's more out of poetic considerations that he had to add this descriptor of curled to the gu.
But to be fair, I feel like on the balance of probability, it was barbecued. This probably wasn't soup. But
yes,
that is probably irrelevant to the text. Yeah.
DCAM has said something, I didn't want to say it out loud, but he said it, so I can read it out loud. He says, only way to be elegant with food is to use French words to non-French. And that's exactly what I was thinking. The whole time I wanted to say tartropizien, and is that weird? I know. Because French words sound foreign to me, though. I don't know, would French people think of French food as elegant? I think it's elegant because it's foreign. Like, you could say any foreign food to me and it would sound elegant because I don't immediately associate it with food. That's all I'm saying. Just making my point again. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. The other word I wanted to bring up that I will say Brochak kind of fumbles this as well. I feel like he could have handled this better. I think he tends to give it as control in most circumstances, but the character mu is actually it's actually the term for like herding animals,
exactly,
which I quite like.
And who in that case uses to tend to something.
Oh,
like yeah. I'm
like
not a
husband.
fan of that. I think they're
like
both
husband.
bad, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we already get 3 words, right? Control, tend, and I would say husband, like husband the fire or something. So I get it though. I understand it when I read it. That was the one I read, right? Because when I read the word controlling, I instantly thought about my office. So not to bring it back to business or anything. Hashtag, shout out to Catcher.
Or the problem with mu is if you want to use husband in the sense of husbandry, right? That's more to raise something, and there is a better classical Chinese word for that would be yang. But even that yang, to raise an animal, to raise a child, has in it a notion of control as well.
To shepherd, guys. To shepherd.
To shepherd, yeah. That will be
to be fair, that is a decent one. Yeah.
Okay, can we tag him and then say, please change this to shepherd? Oh, is he dead? I'm sorry. I apologize. Shout out to Brochaf. I'm sorry. It is 7th Moon. Maybe he's back. Touch wood. No, not me. Not me though. I'm not hosting. I mean, sorry. Shushu, you want to say something?
One thing with this mu metaphor or word is that if you look at the character, it has a hand symbol in it, which the idea that it can give is that you use manual control. At least you know in that sense, shepherd is more like to guide something. It also has this control, but it's a different kind of control. And I think why probably who goes with tend is it has hand in it as well, right? Tendon. So yeah, I'm not sure if I would go with shepherd, but okay, that's baseball.
Contra leopard. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, anyway, I understood it because not to bring it to the intensely mundane, but I was thinking about, the office and how I'm going to get people to do what I tell them to and all that mess, And it's true. You do have to be very clear about what you're about and tend to their feelings, figure out what they feel like, what's going on. Do they have their Stanley Cups yet? Because it's the trend on TikTok and all that mess. It's been a long summer. Sorry. Did anyone else have something more important to say?
You've been herding them by means of Stanley Cups.
No, they've been herding them. They sell through their Stanley Cups. Okay, I was reading about the Stanley Cup thing, and we were all laughing about it online. And then about a week later, all the Zoomer girls had Stanley Cups. They weren't real Stanley Cups, thank goodness. They weren't that stupid, but they did get essentially jumbo plastic cups to drink from, all pastel colors. I thought, oh my goodness, really? shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to hurt cats. Okay. So anyway, this is therapeutic. I like how I kind of make everything about me. Sorry about that. I'll shut up now.
Well, there's more therapy going on in the Discord. So do you want to quickly run through the Discord comments?
Oh, sure. While you guys take a drink or something. Yes.
No. I mean, I was going to say we could wrap it up since it's been like 2 hours.
Sure. So we'll
quickly
go back.
do the Discord comments. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go back to Edward saying the passage which I just read is interesting because you can see where the esotericization of Guǐgǔzi grew out of. Also, the lodestone bit is acknowledged to be the earliest mention of magnetism. I referenced the tongue sucking out the juice from the bone thing, which it caused excitement because, of course, Catcher says tulang soup, bone soup, and I say bakute, which is a peasant's dish, but it's basically just bone broth. Porridge is made from bone broth. Shushu points out that what just happened was powerful court woman demands all court philosophers physically satisfy her, which is hilarious. Also true. Magi says, I guess I'll point what sticks out most to me. Might be a little cliche. Quote, therefore, to know things, begin with oneself, know yourself first and know about others. This reminds me of, I can't read this word. Is it Alcibiades? Alcibiades. I got like 4 syllables. And the Delphic maxim, know thyself. This is a sentiment found across so many cultures, like with Ibn Arabi and in classical Hermeticism, corpus hermeticum, as it were. The beginning of any kind of knowledge begins with exploring who and what we are. Without this exploration or pursuit of unknown, I think. Yeah, you kind of have to start somewhere, right? I guess. So just want to fill in the downside. It sounds like you kind of try to be in it. I don't know anything. Yeah. Sorry. Is there a contemporary book on Korean recipes that talks about barbecue? Make me hungry. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the current ways that Chinese barbecue things is probably how they used to barbecue things, unless it involves something the Portuguese brought in. Let's see. And then a quote from, okay, and then another Magi quote. This passage from Guǐgǔzi echoes, I feel, Tao Te Ching 33. He who knows others may have knowledge enough to predict the rain, but he who knows himself will see with the clarity of the sun and moon. William Scott Wilson provided that translation. To see with the clarity of the sun and moon would be essential in order to penetrate the knowledge of others and how to properly govern them. Make the people's need the ruler's needs. I need this last bit. Make the people's needs the ruler's needs. That's what I need you guys to do. Sorry. Again, to make this all about me. Yes. And then Edward posted something from Sun Tzu's Art of War, which reflects the same sentiment. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. What if you only know the enemy but not yourself? He didn't provide that. That feels like conceptual asymmetry there. I guess that's pointless. Okay. So shall we wrap it up? Does anyone have any other specific point they wish to make? And it will be on record forever. I also just realized I have talked about PM on the recorded space. That was maybe a very poor choice by me. SFCB,
we can delete the space if you want.
No. At least give Neijing Lover a chance to hear this. And shout out to Neijing Lover if you're listening to this in the future. Hi. No, at least the people who requested a recording should be able to hear it first. I also hope Jacopo's here. I mean, we're doing this at 10 a.m. for him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's here. Anyway,
no, I did allow anonymous listeners, so maybe he's anonymous. I'm not sure.
Is the opposite of anonymous? Anyway, yeah, I think it is. I think it is actually. I'm pretty sure it is actually, unironically. Okay. Shout out to Baji Chuan says, shout out to the guys watching on YouTube too, because of course he's simulcasting this on YouTube.
Oh yeah. Oh,
just
yeah,
terrifying.
Thank you for doing that, by the way. That's
God.
Namaskaran. Yeah, but
we are all on. Okay, I can't say this part out loud, but I'll say in Discord. But it's got to do with contemporary stuff, and also is a tie-in to the other topic we almost did before I was defeated 2-1 in the votes. Okay, so but it's a bit hairy. I'll do it in the chat. Okay, so I guess.
Wait, no, did I miss a tribute? Sorry, yeah, yeah. I wrote that wrong. Anyway, no, yeah. Let's go.
The anonymous one?
Yeah. No. Let's yeah.
Okay. It's been about almost 2 hours. So we shall tie it up now. Thank you everyone for attending and for contributing, especially everyone speaking. Do follow us in DAObi, do join us in the DAObi Discord. It's real fun. All kinds of fun people. Sane, not always, but fun for sure.
And we have merch now as well. We've got shirts, and I have I suppose I've got a bed sheet sized chin flag now. Sitting opposite me now. I could technically walk down the street wearing it as a dress and be perfectly modest. So
chin flag, all that mess. But you'd also have to pair it with a pair of very brightly colored lime green sneakers. Apparently, that's the thing of today. Okay. So tip of hat to her. Sorry, that's okay. So remember, as always, survive, thrive, survive, alive, eat, pray, love. You are enough. You are so enough. It's unbelievable how enough you are. You have nothing to prove, only to share. I'm literally repeating all the liberal quotes I know that I actually like. Not eat, pray, love though. I don't care about eat, pray, love. Okay.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna end the space then.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.